Hi, I made a video last week about this slot mortising machine that I'd made, and I thought I'd come back and make a follow-up video just to show you how far I got with it, the sort of things that went right and the sort of things that perhaps didn't go right. So for those of you who saw the first video, it probably doesn't look that much except for this monstrosity of a contraption up the top. This is part of the dust collection system, obviously. I'll get to the reason why you need that later and perhaps tell you a little bit about that. But let me start off at the front of it and work my way back. So one of the things that I noticed when I first started cutting mortises is that one side seemed a little bit higher than the other. In other words, if I can give you an example, there's a slot that I cut. This distance here was slightly bigger than this distance here. It's not so big that you can actually see it, or actually you can, because that's how I noticed it in the first place, but I'd done some adjustment by the time I did this one. This one's still a little bit out, but I needed my calipers out to actually measure what it was, but it was still enough. So the way I got around that was I decided just to shim this side. So I started off, and I'm not sure you can see this, but I just put a piece of paper on there and stapled it at the top. The idea being that eventually I'd replace it with something more permanent. And then that wasn't quite enough, so I added another piece of paper and another piece of paper, and eventually I ended up with 6 pieces of paper there, and now I think I've got it just about spot on. So as I said, the intention is to replace that at some later stage. Whether I actually do that or not is a different story. While I'm here, the other thing I did was I added some T-track and some hold downs. Now, I've never used T-track before, and I've never used these sorts of hold downs before, but I can thoroughly recommend them. It's a really, really good way to work. I bought a basic set of T-track stuff. I got a 1.3 metre length of T-track itself, and I think I've got 8 knobs and 8 T-bolts, and it cost me $53. I think it was $53 well spent. What I love about it is the easy way these spin up and spin down. You can do things really quickly. And clamping things down, these clamps, these hold down clamps, by the way, I made out of hardwood. I saw some article in a woodworking magazine that said how to do it. And when I saw the design, I thought, I can't see how that's going to work, because you're sort of cutting, the grain is going this way, which means that, you know, if the grain was straight, I could understand how it worked. And sure enough, within 3 uses, this one broke. However, having said that, I just ground the front of it down, and it still works fine, just like that. So if you haven't tried these, I urge you to make some. You know, take you 10 minutes to make one. They give you a whirl. They work really, really well. Some other things I did were I added this handle. Now this handle, I think, is a stroke of accidental genius. How it came about was the original video had the guy with what I'd call a screen door handle on there, where you screw it in from both sides, and that seemed to work okay. And then he had another handle on the back here. So one was to go from side to side that way, and the other one was to go backwards and forwards. The beauty of this handle is that you can do both very, very easily. And the way it works in practice is you go in a little bit, and then you go side to side, then you go a little bit further, side to side, a little bit further, side to side, and you keep going until you hit the stop. As I said, the beauty of this handle is it works really, really well, and it doesn't matter where you stand, it still works really, really well. Now, the story of the handle itself is interesting as well. For those of you who are married, this might be a quite familiar scenario, but we had a curbside pickup the other day. And when we have a curbside pickup, the first thing my wife does is she comes down here to my workshop and she starts looking around, and she says, "Do you need this? You haven't used this for a while, let's chuck it out." And she picks up things like my dovetail jig, for example. And she said, "I haven't seen you use this." And I said, "I use it all the time." And she said, "When was the last time you used it? What did you make?" I said, "I made that buffet upstairs, remember?" And she said, "That was in 1997. Not much I could say about that. So anyway, she didn't chuck it away. I don't know what else she chucked away. But the reason I'm telling you that is she wanted to throw this away. And this is part of the handle stem of a poolside umbrella. So the umbrella got destroyed in the storm many years ago, and of course I kept the wooden bit because I knew there'd be a use for it one day, and here you are, here's the use for it. So that's the handle. Some other things I did were, I was a bit concerned about the accuracy of how the bit was facing, whether it was horizontal to the table and whether it was at 90 degrees to the fence. So one of the guys on a forum that I posted this to suggested that I buy a length of steel rod, 1/4 inch steel rod, and replace the bit with that, and he was absolutely spot on. That exaggerated the error and I could see the problem straight away. So at Masters on Saturday morning I bought a metre of this, cost me $4. Took the bit out, put this in its place, and straight away out there I could see that it pointed off to the right. So I got the square out and put the square on the fence and managed to fiddle around with this a little bit and got that right. And then I could see that pointing straight out, it was actually pointing down a little bit. That meant that my mortises were as a slight tilt. It's not very much, but it is there, and I haven't really repaired that yet because well, I haven't had the time to do it, but that's the one thing I still have to do. Apart from that, what else did I do? I've tidied the cord and had a way to turn it on. The way I was doing it before was I was just plug it into an extension lead over there, and that just wasn't very satisfactory. I was supposed to put locking knobs on here, but so far I haven't had a need for them. I mean, it's only a trivial job to do it. I've got the slot cut in the back of the table. I've just got to make the blocks to go in there and put some nuts on them. So that's still to come, but at the moment I'm quite happy just having one standard width for the mortises. Dust collection. Let me tell you about the dust collection. The guy who thought up the idea, at the end of his last video, his third video, had a brief description of dust collection, and this is what he came up with. So he didn't really give any instructions on how to do it, so I had to sort of work it out for myself. And I think it's actually come out quite well. It works, you know, I'd say it captures 95% of the dust, whereas prior to putting this on, I would end up just covered in sawdust. It was just a nightmare. And in fact, it was starting to put me off using it because there was just too much dust. So it's quite simple the way it's done. It's just a box that sits over the top of the fence with a bit of this stuff stuck on top of it. And I've cut a groove out of here. So all I did was I got my router table and I popped a bit up a little bit and I lowered this down onto it, and then I moved it along the fence and back. Then I turned it a little bit and moved it along the fence and back until I had a groove that was about as wide as the slot that I have on the top of that little box. Unfortunately I've used all this duct tape on it, which makes it look a little bit ugly. I should have spray painted MAC black or something like that to make it look a little bit prettier. But I'm hoping to do away with that and put something more aesthetically pleasing in there. But that's still to come. So what sort of job does it do? I think it does actually quite a good job. If you can see there, that's the mortise it cuts. Here's one with a tenon already in it, and if I join them up, particularly if I get them around the right way, the joint is actually quite good. One of the other things I like about this style is setting it up. So to set the height of the table, for example, I undo the locking knobs, pull out the drawer, move these out of the way. Then typically I'd find the centre of here, but before I do that, I'll just get the one that I prepared earlier, which is in fact that one, and I'll take it apart. I'll take the part with the tenon already in there, and then I just fit it into the slot that's already there. Then I just raise the table till it hits the bottom, tighten up the lock nuts, pull it back out and we're good to go. So how do I know that that's correct? Well, I know because if I put that down there and then I turn the router bit round so you've got the pointed bits going up like that, and then I go in, I don't hit anything. So that means it's exactly perfect. So that's really, really quick. If I didn't have one pre-made, all I do was I would line the middle of the piece of stock up with that mark there, which is the middle of the slot, and I'd also do the same at the side. I'd find the middle of the side of the piece of stock, line that up, and away we go. So then it'd simply be a case of putting on the clamps, plugging it in, and then boom, 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 and then we got it. The other good thing I did this morning while I was waiting for everyone to get up so that I could make some noise, I went to the markets, the Rockley markets in Brisbane, and I bought some of this. And I didn't buy it for any specific purpose, it just happened that the guy who sells Perspex was there, so I bought a $10 sheet of it. And as luck would have it, it was the perfect thing to put on the back of this box, because now I can actually see what's going on in there, and I can also see all the dust that isn't getting over me, which is fantastic. That's about all I've got to tell you. Like I said, I think I'm just about there. I can make usable mortises. There's another one I did earlier using timber. It's I think pretty well perfect. So there you go. That's it. Thanks for watching.